"You're not half the man my father is," my son-in-law said. I pushed my chair back and responded, "Then maybe he should start paying your rent." My daughter froze in shock. "Rent? What rent?" "My name is Evander Holt, and at 59 years old I thought I had seen it all. I've worked construction for 37 years, built homes with these calloused hands, saved every penny I could, and raised my daughter Sarah as a single father after her mother walked out when she was just 8 years old. I thought I knew what sacrifice meant. I thought I understood what family was supposed to be. I was wrong about a lot of things." The confrontation happened on a Sunday evening in November, right here in my modest 2-story house in Toledo, Ohio. The same house where I'd raised Sarah, where I'd taught her to ride a bike in the driveway, where I'd stayed up countless nights helping her with homework at the kitchen table. The house that apparently my daughter had been lying about for the past 3 years. It started innocently enough. Sarah and her husband Marcus had come over for our usual Sunday dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, the works. Sarah was 28 now, had been married to Marcus for 4 years, and they lived in what I thought was their own place, about 15 minutes across town. A nice little ranch house with a white picket fence. The kind of place I'd always dreamed Sarah would have. Marcus worked in sales for some tech company, always wearing those expensive suits and talking about his deals and networking. He drove a brand new BMW, wore a Rolex that probably cost more than I made in 3 months, and had this way of speaking that made everything sound like a business transaction. Sarah seemed happy enough, though lately she'd been more distant, more secretive. During dinner, Marcus started in on his usual routine, subtle digs about my old-fashioned way of thinking, comments about how I should modernize the house, suggestions that maybe I should consider retirement. I'd learned to bite my tongue over the years, mostly for Sarah's sake. She was my only child, and I wanted to keep the peace, but then he crossed a line. "You know, Evander," Marcus said, cutting into his pot roast with theatrical precision, "Sarah and I have been talking. We think it's time you considered moving into one of those senior living communities. You're getting up there in age, and this house is becoming too much for you to handle." I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm 59, Marcus. Not 99. I know. He waved his fork dismissively. "But think about it practically. You could sell this place, downsize, and actually enjoy your golden years, instead of worrying about maintenance and upkeep." Sarah was staring at her plate, not saying a word. "That should have been my first red flag. Besides," Marcus continued, "you've already done so much for us. It's time you focused on yourself." "Done so much for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly have I done for you, Marcus?" He laughed, that condescending laugh that had always grated on my nerves. "Come on, don't be modest. The financial support, letting us stay here when we needed to, helping with the down payment on our house." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What down payment?" Sarah finally looked up, her eyes wide with panic. "Dad, what down payment, Marcus?" I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus looked between Sarah and me, confusion flickering across his face. The money for our house? The $15,000 you gave us last year?" The room went silent, except for the tick of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. $15,000. I'd never given them $15,000 for anything. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I never gave you any money for a house." "What?" He laughed nervously. "Of course you did. Sarah told me." "Sarah, tell him." But Sarah had gone pale, her hands trembling as she reached for her water glass. "Sarah." I turned to my daughter, the daughter I'd raised, the daughter I'd trusted with everything. "What is he talking about?" "Dad, I can explain." "Explain what?" Marcus's voice was rising now, panic creeping in. "Sarah, what's going on? You said your father gave us the money. You said he was happy to help us get started." The pieces started falling into place like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Sarah's evasiveness about their finances, the expensive clothes, the luxury car, the lifestyle that never quite matched Marcus's supposed salary, the way she always deflected when I asked about their mortgage payments. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where did the money come from?" She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Dad, please, I can explain everything." "It's not what you think. Just tell me where the money came from." Marcus was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Sarah, answer him. I took it." The words came out so quietly I almost didn't hear them. "You took it." My voice cracked. "Took it from where?" From your accounts. From the joint account you set up for emergencies. And from your retirement fund." The world tilted sideways. "The joint account I'd set up years ago so Sarah could help me with bills if something happened to me. The retirement fund I'd been building for 37 years, penny by penny, overtime shift by overtime shift." "How much?" I asked. She couldn't look at me. "Dad, how much, Sarah?" $47,000. Marcus dropped his fork, the clatter echoing through the suddenly suffocating silence. 47. "Sarah, you told me your father gave us 15,000. Where did the rest? What did you do with the rest?" We needed it. For the house, for the car payments, for everything. "Dad, you have to understand I was going to pay it back." "I was going to tell you." "When?" The word came out like a gunshot. "When were you going to tell me, Sarah? When were you going to pay back nearly $50,000? Marcus was staring at her in horror. "You stole from your father. You've been lying to me for 3 years about where our money came from." "It wasn't stealing." Sarah stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "He's my father. Everything he has will be mine someday anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. Everything he has will be mine someday anyway, as if I was already dead. As if my life's work, my sacrifice, my love for her meant nothing more than an early inheritance she'd decided to claim without asking. "Sit down," I said quietly. "Dad, please let me explain." I said, "Sit down." She righted her chair and sat, still crying. Marcus looked like he might throw up. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You've been stealing money from my accounts for 3 years. You used it to fund a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You lied to your husband about where the money came from. And you justified it by telling yourself that it would all be yours eventually anyway." "Dad, it's not like that." "Then tell me what it's like." "Sarah, help me understand." She wiped her nose with her napkin, trying to compose herself. "We were struggling, okay? Marcus's job wasn't bringing in as much as we thought it would. We had bills, we had the wedding to pay off. We wanted to buy a house like normal couples do. I knew you had money just sitting there, and I thought I could borrow it and pay it back before you noticed." "Borrow?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean steal? It's not stealing when it's family." "The hell it isn't!" Marcus finally found his voice. "Sarah, how could you not tell me? How could you let me think? God, all this time I thought your father was helping us out of generosity, and you were robbing him." "Don't be so dramatic, Marcus. My father has plenty of money." "I had plenty of money," I corrected. Past tense. She looked at me with something that might have been hope. "You still do, right?" "I mean, 47,000 isn't everything you have." The casual way she said it, like $47,000 was pocket change. Like it wasn't the result of decades of 12-hour days and missed vacations and choosing the store-brand cereal to save $1 here and there. "Sarah," I said, "that $47,000 represented 7 years of my retirement savings. 7 years of putting away every extra penny so that someday I could stop destroying my body with construction work and maybe travel a little. Maybe see the grandchildren I hoped you'd give me. Maybe just exist without worrying about money for the first time in my adult life. But you'll make more, she said weakly. I'm 59 years old. Sarah, my back is shot, my knees are gone, and I've got maybe 6 good working years left in me if I'm lucky. That money wasn't just sitting there, it was my future. Marcus put his head in his hands. This is unbelievable. Sarah, we have to pay him back. We have to figure out how to... With what money? Sarah snapped. You think I would have taken it if we had other options? You're not half the man my father is, he said, looking at me with disgust. My dad would never have put his children in a position where they felt like they had to steal from him. My dad takes care of his family. The implication was clear. I had failed as a father. I had somehow driven my daughter to theft through my inadequacy, my selfishness, my failure to provide adequately for her needs. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood up. 40 years of supporting my family, of working my ass off to give Sarah every opportunity I never had, of sacrificing my own dreams so she could pursue hers, and this is what I got. A son-in-law who thought I was worthless, and a daughter who saw me as nothing more than a bank account to raid whenever she felt like it. Then maybe he should start paying your rent, I said. The words came out calm, controlled, but they hit the room like a bomb. Sarah's face went white. Rent? What rent? I walked to the kitchen counter and pulled out a manila folder I'd been meaning to show them for weeks. Inside were property records, tax documents, and a lease agreement I'd never had the heart to enforce. The rent on the house you've been living in for the past 3 years, I said, spreading the papers on the table. The house at 412 Maple Street. The house I bought as an investment property in 2019. The house I've been letting you live in. For free, because I thought you were struggling young newlyweds who deserved a helping hand. Marcus grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This says you own our house. I own your house, I confirmed. We bought it cash when the market was down, thinking maybe someday I'd rent it out for extra income in my retirement. But then Sarah told me you two were having trouble finding an affordable place, so I offered to let you live there until you got on your feet. But we've been paying rent, Marcus said desperately. We've been sending checks to Riverside Property Management every month. I nodded. Riverside Property Management. The company Sarah set up 3 years ago. The company that exists on paper only, with a P.O. box and a fake website. The company that's been depositing your rent checks into an account that Sarah controls. The silence stretched on forever. Marcus stared at the papers, then at his wife, then back at the papers. How much? He whispered. $1,500 a month, I said. For 3 years. $54,000. 54. Marcus's voice cracked. Sarah, you've been collecting our rent money. Our rent money that I thought was going to some property management company. Sarah was sobbing now, ugly, desperate sobs. I was going to tell you both. I was going to figure it out. I just needed more time. Time for what? I asked. Time to steal more money? Time to come up with better lies. Time to make it right. How? I slammed my hand on the table, making both of them jump. How are you going to make it right, Sarah? You've stolen nearly $100,000 from me and your husband. You've been lying to both of us for years. You've been playing us against each other while you lived like a queen on money you had no right to take. So tell me, how exactly were you planning to make that right? She had no answer. Of course she had no answer. Marcus stood up slowly, his face gray. I need some air. He walked out onto the back porch, leaving Sarah and me alone in the kitchen where I'd once helped her with her math homework, where I'd taught her to cook scrambled eggs, where I'd held her when she cried about boys in high school. Daddy, she whispered, using the name she hadn't called me in years. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry you got caught, I said. Oh, sorry you did it? Sorry I did it. Sorry I hurt you. Sorry I hurt Marcus. I know I messed up, but I can fix this. We can fix this. How, Sarah? Tell me exactly how you plan to fix this. I'll get a job, a better job. I'll pay you back every penny. You haven't worked in 2 years. I'll start working again. I'll do whatever it takes. And Marcus's rent money, the money he thought he was paying to a legitimate property management company, the money he budgeted for, worked for, earned honestly. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll pay that back too. With what? You just said you don't have any money. I'll figure it out. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The expensive highlights in her hair that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The designer purse on the counter that probably cost more than my truck payment. The jewelry, the clothes, the manicured nails, all of it paid for with stolen money. All of it built on lies. You want to know what the worst part is, Sarah? She looked up at me hopefully, as if there might be a way back from this. The worst part is that if you had just asked me for help, I would have given it to you. If you had come to me 3 years ago and said, Dad, we're struggling, we need help with a down payment, I would have found a way. If you had said, Dad, can we rent your house for a fair price, I would have worked something out. If you had just been honest with me, we could have figured it out together. I know, but I was embarrassed. I was scared you'd think less of me, less of you. I shook my head. Sarah, I raised you by myself from the time you were 8 years old. I know what struggling looks like. I know what it means to be too proud to ask for help. But you know what I never taught you? She waited. I never taught you that it was okay to steal. I never taught you that lying was acceptable. And I sure as hell never taught you that family was something you could exploit whenever it was convenient. Marcus came back inside, his eyes red-rimmed. I called my dad, he said quietly. I told him what happened. He's driving up from Cincinnati tomorrow. Marcus, Sarah started. Don't. He held up a hand. Just don't talk to me right now, he turned to me. Mr. Holt, I want you to know that I had no idea. None of this. I really believed you were helping us out of kindness. I thought you were the kind of father-in-law who took care of his kids. I am that kind of father-in-law, I said. Or I was. I want to pay you back. Every penny. I don't know how yet, but I will. Marcus, you don't owe me anything. You're a victim here too. I feel like such an idiot. All those times I bragged to my friends about how generous you were, how lucky Sarah was to have a father who supported her dreams. And the whole time I was being robbed by my own daughter, Sarah stood up abruptly. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. Stop acting like I'm some kind of criminal. You are a criminal, Marcus said quietly. You committed fraud. You stole money. You forged documents. You created a fake company. Sarah, these are felonies. You wouldn't turn me in. You're my husband. Marcus stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. I don't know who you are anymore. That's when I realized the full scope of what my daughter had done. She hadn't just stolen money. She had destroyed her marriage, shattered her relationship with me, and built her entire adult life on a foundation of lies. And even now, caught red-handed with nowhere to run, she was more angry than sorry. I think, I said carefully, that you both need to leave now. Dad, I said leave. Both of you. I need time to think about this. Think about what? Sarah demanded. Think about whether you're going to call the police on your own daughter. The question hung in the air like smoke. Was I going to call the police? Was I going to press charges against the little girl I'd tucked into bed every night for 10 years, the teenager I'd taught to drive, the young woman I'd walked down the aisle at her wedding? I don't know, I said honestly. I really don't know. Marcus gathered his coat. Come on, Sarah, let's go. Where are we going to go? She asked, and for the first time I heard real fear in her voice. I guess we'll figure that out, Marcus said. Just like we're going to figure out everything else. They left without another word. I stood at the kitchen window and watched Marcus's BMW pull out of my driveway, the BMW that I had unknowingly helped pay for. along with everything else in their fraudulent life. When their taillights disappeared around the corner, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the papers spread in front of me. Property deeds, bank statements, evidence of betrayal, 3 years of lies laid out in black and white. I thought about calling someone, my brother maybe, or my old friend Pete from work. But what would I say? That my daughter had stolen nearly $100,000 from me. That she'd been running a scam on her own husband for 3 years. That everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. Instead, I just sat there in the quiet house, surrounded by the ghosts of better times, and tried to figure out how the hell I was going to survive this. Financially, emotionally, spiritually, I wasn't sure I had enough left in me to rebuild from this kind of devastation. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, one thing became crystal clear. The Sarah I had raised, the daughter I had loved and sacrificed for, was gone. Maybe she had never existed at all. Maybe I had been living with a stranger all these years, someone who saw love as weakness and family as opportunity. Tomorrow I would have to decide what to do next. Tonight I would mourn the daughter I thought I had, and the future I thought we were building together, because after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. If you're finding this story as gripping, as I hope you are, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me share more stories like this one. Now let's continue. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face when she said those words. Everything he has will be mine someday anyway. The casual cruelty of it, the entitled assumption that my life's work was just something she was waiting to inherit. At 3 a.m. I found myself standing in my garage, staring at the tools I'd accumulated over nearly 4 decades of construction work. Hammers worn smooth by my grip, levels that had helped me build straight walls for countless families, measuring tapes stretched across thousands of job sites. Each tool told a story of honest work, of sweat and pride, and the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands. Sarah had never understood that. Even as a child, she'd been embarrassed by my calloused hands, my work boots, the sawdust that seemed permanently embedded in my truck's upholstery. She'd always wanted more, fancier clothes, expensive gadgets, trips to places I couldn't afford. I'd tried to give her what I could, working overtime and weekends, but it was never enough. Maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe I should have taught her the value of earning things instead of always trying to provide them. My phone buzzed. A text message at 3:17 a.m. From Sarah. Dad, please don't hate me. I know I messed up, but I love you and I need you to forgive me. We can work this out, please. I stared at the message for a long time. Love. She said she loved me. But what kind of love steals a man's retirement? What kind of love builds itself on years of deception? I didn't reply. The next morning, Monday, I called in sick to work for the first time in 8 years. I couldn't face the guys, couldn't pretend everything was normal when my entire world had just imploded. Instead, I drove to the First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 26 years. Mr. Holt! Janet behind the counter greeted me with her usual smile. What can I do for you today? I need to speak with someone about my accounts, I said. All of them. An hour later, I was sitting across from Tom Morrison, a bank manager I'd known since he was a teller. The papers spread between us painted a devastating picture. So she had access to the joint checking account, Tom was saying, which gave her the ability to transfer funds to the savings account, and from there. She could move money anywhere, I finished. I'm afraid so. The joint account was set up with full access privileges for both parties. Legally, she had every right to make these transactions. Legally. There was that word again. Sarah kept hiding behind it, as if legality and morality were the same thing. What are my options? I asked. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Well, you could close the accounts, obviously. Remove her access going forward. But as for recovering the money that's already been spent... He shrugged. That's really a matter for law enforcement or a civil attorney. You mean I'd have to sue my own daughter, or press criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement? I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with impossible choices. By the time I pulled into my driveway, there was another car waiting for me, a silver Mercedes I'd never seen before. The man who got out was tall, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He had Marcus's eyes, but none of his nervous energy. "Mr. Holt, I'm Richard Patterson, Marcus's father." We shook hands, and his grip was firm, confident, the handshake of a man used to being in charge. "I drove up from Cincinnati as soon as Marcus called me," he said. "I think we need to talk." I invited him inside, made coffee, and we sat in my living room, the same room where Sarah had opened Christmas presents, where she'd brought home her first boyfriend to meet me, where I'd given her my blessing to marry Marcus. "My son is devastated," Richard said without preamble. "He's questioning everything about his marriage, his judgment, his future. But more than that, he's consumed with guilt about what's been done to you." He shouldn't be. He's as much a victim as I am. That's what I told him, but Marcus has always been hard on himself. Richard leaned forward. "Mr. Holt, may I call you Evander?" I nodded. "Evander, I want you to know that I intend to make this right. Every penny that was stolen from you, I'm going to see that it's returned." I blinked. "Mr. Patterson—" "Richard, please." "Richard, that's very generous, but I can't accept—" "You're not accepting charity," he interrupted. "You're accepting restitution. My son married your daughter, and your daughter used that marriage to defraud both of you. As far as I'm concerned, this makes Marcus, and by extension me, partially responsible. That's not how responsibility works. Maybe not legally, but it's how I was raised." He pulled out a checkbook. "How much?" "Richard, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but how much, Evander?" I sighed. $94,000, 47 from my retirement account, 36 in rent payments Marcus made to the fake company, and about 11,000 in various other expenses I've discovered since last night. Richard wrote out the check without hesitation. "There. Now we can focus on what really matters, which is making sure this never happens to anyone else." He handed me the check, and I stared at it in disbelief. Richard Patterson was giving me nearly $100,000 to fix his daughter-in-law's crimes. No questions asked, no payment plan, no conditions. "I can't take this," I said. "You already have," he replied. "It's in your hands." "But, Evander, let me tell you something about my son. Marcus is a good man, but he's trusting to a fault. He sees the best in people, sometimes when there's nothing good to see. He believed in Sarah because he wanted to believe in her, but more than that, he believed in you. In me. He used to call me every week, talking about his father-in-law, how hard you worked, how much you'd sacrificed for Sarah, how lucky he was to marry into a family with such strong values." Richard's voice grew quiet. "He looked up to you, Evander. He saw you as the kind of father he hoped to be someday." The weight of those words settled on me like a physical thing. While I'd been tolerating Marcus's presence for Sarah's sake, he'd been admiring me, learning from me, seeing me as a role model. I had no idea, I said. Of course you didn't. You were too busy being humble and decent to notice how much respect you'd earned. Richard stood up. Keep the check. Use it to rebuild your retirement, your future, whatever you need. But I want something in return. What's that? I want you to press charges against Sarah. The room went silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock. Richard. Hear me out. My son is talking about taking her back. He's talking about forgiveness and second chances and working through this together. But Sarah isn't sorry, Evander. She's sorry she got caught. And unless there are real consequences, she'll do it again. She's still my daughter, and Marcus is still my son. But if she faces no consequences for what she's done, if she learns that she can steal and lie and manipulate without any real repercussions, then she'll destroy my son piece by piece. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. I thought about Sarah's face last night. The anger when she realized she couldn't talk her way out of it. The entitlement in her voice when she said, I should have been taking care of her better. What if pressing charges destroys any chance of repairing our relationship? I asked. Richard's laugh was bitter. Evander, what relationship? She stole your retirement money and lied to your face for 3 years. She created a fake company to embezzle rent money from her own husband. She's been playing you both like marks in a con game. What exactly are you trying to preserve? He was right, and I knew it. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. I need time to think, I said, of course. But while you're thinking, consider this. Every day that passes without consequences is another day she's learning that she can get away with it. Another day she's planning her next move, her next lie, her next victim. After Richard left, I sat alone with his check and his words. $94,000, more money than I'd ever seen in one place, handed to me by a man I'd barely known existed 24 hours ago. A man who understood justice better than I did, apparently. My phone rang. Sarah, Dad, we need to talk. I think we said everything that needed saying last night. Please just listen. Marcus kicked me out. His father is in town, and they've been talking about me like I'm some kind of criminal. Aren't you? Silence. Dad, I'm your daughter. I made mistakes, but I'm still your little girl. My little girl never stole from me. I didn't steal. I borrowed. I was always going to pay it back. With what money, Sarah? You haven't worked in 2 years. You've been living off stolen funds. Where exactly was this payback money going to come from? I was figuring it out. For 3 years you were figuring it out. And in the meantime, you kept taking more. Dad, please. I have nowhere to go. Marcus won't talk to me. His family hates me. And I don't have any money. You have whatever's left in that account you've been depositing Marcus's rent into. Another silence. I spent it, she whispered. You spent it? All of it, $54,000? Living expenses, Dad. You don't understand how expensive everything is. I thought about my own living expenses. My grocery budget of $60 a week. My 15-year-old truck that I maintain myself to avoid repair costs. My thermostat set at 68 in winter to keep the heating bills down. The countless small sacrifices I'd made over the years while she was spending stolen money on designer handbags. Where are you staying tonight? I asked, hating myself for caring. I was hoping I could come home. Just for a few days until I figure things out. Home. She wanted to come home to the man she'd robbed. In the house she'd lied about, acting like the victim in a situation she'd created through years of calculated deception. No, I said. Dad, I said no. Sarah, you're not welcome here. You're really going to abandon your own daughter. I'm not abandoning you. I'm protecting myself from further exploitation. Fine, she said, and I could hear the anger creeping back into her voice. Fine, but when you're old and alone and wondering why your daughter never calls, remember this conversation." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time, then at Richard's check. $94,000 from a stranger who understood family loyalty better than my own daughter did. A man who was willing to pay for crimes he didn't commit to protect the integrity of the people he loved. That's when I made my decision. I called Detective Maria Santos at the Toledo Police Department, a woman I'd met when vandals broke into my job site 2 years ago. "Detective Santos? This is Evander Holt. I need to report a fraud case." "What kind of fraud, Mr. Holt?" I took a deep breath. "The kind where a daughter steals her father's retirement and embezzles money from her husband for 3 years. "I'll be right over." As I waited for Detective Santos to arrive, I thought about Sarah's threat. When you're old and alone and wondering why your daughter never calls, remember this conversation. She was right about one thing: I probably would be alone. But I was beginning to realize that being alone might be better than being with someone who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Some relationships aren't worth preserving. Some bridges are meant to be burned. And sometimes the hardest lesson a parent can teach their child is that Before we continue with this intense story, I'd love to know, where are you listening to this from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city, state, or country you're tuning in from. It's amazing to connect with listeners from all over the world. Now let's see what happens when the law gets involved. Detective Maria Santos arrived 45 minutes later, and I could tell from her expression that this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. She was a compact woman in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense demeanor that had impressed me during our previous encounter. "Mr. Holt," she said, settling into my kitchen chair with a notepad and recording device. "When you called, you mentioned fraud involving family members. Can you walk me through what happened?" For the next 2 hours, I laid out the entire story. The stolen retirement funds, the fake property management company, the rent scam, 3 years of systematic deception. Detective Santos asked pointed questions, took notes, and occasionally shook her head in what looked like professional disbelief. "So your daughter had legal access to the joint account," she summarized, "but she used that access to steal money under false pretenses, then created a fraudulent business entity to embezzle funds from her husband." "That's right, and the total amount we're looking at is approximately $94,000. "Yes. Though I should mention that Mr. Patterson, Marcus's father, has already given me a check to cover the stolen amount." Detective Santos looked up from her notes. "He has? That's unusual, but it doesn't change the fact that crimes were committed. Mr. Holt, I have to ask, are you prepared to press formal charges against your daughter?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Pressing charges meant Sarah would have a criminal record. It meant potential jail time. It meant our relationship, whatever was left of it, would be permanently destroyed. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I understand this is difficult, but I need you to understand something. What your daughter did wasn't a family dispute or a misunderstanding. This is wire fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft at minimum. These are serious felonies that carry significant prison time." "How much time?" "Wire fraud alone can carry up to 20 years per count. Given the amount of money involved and the duration of the scheme, we're looking at multiple counts. 20 years. Sarah could spend the next 2 decades in prison. What if she pays the money back?" I asked. "Restitution can affect sentencing, but it doesn't erase the crimes. Mr. Holt, your daughter didn't steal a candy bar from a convenience store. She orchestrated a sophisticated, multi-year fraud scheme that victimized 2 people who trusted her completely. That shows planning, premeditation, and a complete disregard for the law. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Sarah. Dad, Marcus's father is spreading lies about me. Whatever he told you isn't true. I'm your daughter and I need you to believe in me. I showed the message to Detective Santos. She sighed. Mr. Holt, can I speak frankly? Please do. In my 15 years working fraud cases, I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. The perpetrator gets caught, expresses remorse, promises to pay everything back, blames circumstances or other people, and appeals to family loyalty. But here's what I've learned. People who commit this level of financial fraud don't stop until they're forced to stop. You think she'd do it again? I think she's been getting away with it for 3 years, which means she's gotten very good at it. And from what you've told me, she still doesn't seem to understand that what she did was wrong. She's focused on damage control, not accountability. As if to prove Detective Santos's point, my phone rang. Sarah again. Answer it, Detective Santos said. Put it on speaker. Dad. Sarah's voice filled the kitchen, high-pitched and desperate. Dad, I heard a police car was at your house. Please tell me you didn't call the police on your own daughter. I did, Sarah. Silence then. How could you do this to me? How could I do this to you? Sarah, you stole nearly $100,000 from me and your husband. I was going to pay it back. When? How? You haven't worked in 2 years, and you spent every penny you stole. I would have figured something out. But now you've ruined everything. Do you know what this means? Do you know what happens to people who get arrested for financial crimes? Detective Santos gestured for me to keep her talking. Tell me what this means, Sarah, I said. It means I'll have a criminal record. It means I'll never be able to get a decent job. It means my life is over. Your life isn't over. But there have to be consequences for what you did. Consequences? Dad, I'm your daughter. You're supposed to protect me, not destroy me. I protected you for 28 years. I worked myself into the ground to give you every opportunity I could. And this is how you repaid me. I made a mistake. You made hundreds of mistakes, Sarah. Every time you transferred money out of my account, every time you cashed one of Marcus's rent checks, every time you lied to both of us about where your money was coming from. Those were all separate, deliberate choices. Fine. Her voice cracked with fury. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, then let me tell you something, Dad. You were a terrible father. You were always working, never around, never gave me the attention I needed. Mom left because she couldn't stand being married to someone who cared more about work than his family. The words hit me like physical blows. Detective Santos was watching my face carefully. And you know what else? Sarah continued, her voice getting more vicious with each word. Marcus's family has more money than you'll ever see. His father writes checks for more than you make in a year without even thinking about it. That's what real success looks like, Dad, not your pathetic little construction worker life. Sarah, no, let me finish. You want to call the police on me? You want to destroy your own daughter's life? Then you can live with the consequences too. Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old and sick and alone. Don't expect me to visit you in whatever nursing home you end up in. And don't expect me to bring your grandchildren around to meet the grandfather who chose revenge over family. The line went dead. Detective Santos turned off the recorder. Mr. Holt, I'm sorry you had to hear that. I was shaking, whether from anger or grief or exhaustion, I couldn't tell. She's right, you know, about some of it. I did work too much when she was young. I wasn't around as much as I should have been. Mr. Holt, can I tell you something my own father told me when I was struggling with a difficult case years ago? I nodded. He said that guilty people will use your love against you. They'll find every mistake you ever made, every moment of weakness, every regret you carry, and they'll weaponize it to avoid accountability for their own actions. But your imperfections as a parent don't justify her crimes as an adult. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing it didn't make it hurt less. What happens next? I asked. We'll start by documenting everything. Bank records, the fake business registration, communication records. We'll need statements from you, from Marcus, potentially from Mr. Patterson. Then we'll present the case to the prosecutor's office. And Sarah? We'll issue a warrant for her arrest. Given the amounts involved and the sophistication of the scheme, she'll likely be charged with multiple felonies. Wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, possibly racketeering, depending on how the prosecutor wants to handle the fake business angle. A warrant for my daughter's arrest. I tried to imagine Sarah in handcuffs, in a jail cell, standing before a judge. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when she found a dead bird in the backyard, who made me Father's Day cards with crayon drawings of stick figures holding hands. Mr. Holt. Detective Santos's voice brought me back to the present. I need to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to proceed with this? I thought about Sarah's voice on the phone, the venom and manipulation, the threats and emotional blackmail. I thought about Marcus, who'd been betrayed by the woman he loved. I thought about Richard Patterson, who'd written a check for nearly $100,000 to fix his daughter-in-law's crimes. I thought about all the other potential victims Sarah might target if she faced no consequences for what she'd done. Most of all, I thought about the Sarah I'd raised, the values I'd tried to teach her, and how completely she'd rejected every lesson about honesty, integrity, and treating people with respect. Yes, I said. I'm sure. Detective Santos nodded and began packing up her equipment. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, I'd recommend not communicating with Sarah directly. If she contacts you, don't respond. Let us handle it from here. After she left, I sat alone in my kitchen for the second night in a row, but this time felt different. Instead of confusion and betrayal, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief. For 3 years, I'd been living with a nagging sense that something was wrong, that Sarah's lifestyle didn't match her circumstances, that her explanations for her financial situation didn't quite add up. I'd dismissed those feelings, told myself I was being paranoid or overprotective. But my instincts had been right all along. My daughter was a criminal, not in the heat of the moment. Desperate circumstances, way that might earn sympathy, but in the cold, calculated, predatory way that showed a fundamental lack of conscience. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, my phone was buzzing with missed calls and text messages. Some from Sarah, increasingly frantic and angry. Some from numbers I didn't recognize. Friends of hers, probably, trying to intercede on her behalf. But there was one message that made me smile. From Marcus. Mr. Holt, my father told me what you're doing. Thank you for having the courage to do what's right. It couldn't have been easy. No, it wasn't easy. But easy wasn't always right. I deleted Sarah's messages without reading them and went to work for the first time in 2 days. When my co-workers asked where I'd been, I told them I'd had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. That afternoon, Detective Santos called. Mr. Holt, we've got a problem. What kind of problem? Sarah's gone. We went to serve the warrant this morning, but the hotel she was staying at says she checked out yesterday evening. Her cell phone is going straight to voicemail, and none of her known associates have seen her. She ran. It looks that way. We've issued a BOLO, be on the lookout, and flagged her name in the system, but she's got a head start on us. I wasn't surprised. Sarah had always been smart, and she'd had 24 hours to plan since our phone conversation. She knew the walls were closing in. What now? I asked. Now we wait. She can't run forever, and when she surfaces, we'll be ready. But as I hung up the phone, I realized that part of me hoped she would run forever. Not because I wanted her to escape justice, but because I wasn't sure I could handle seeing her in handcuffs, knowing that I was the one who'd put her there. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel righteous. Sometimes it just feels like loss. 3 weeks passed without a word about Sarah. 3 weeks of going to work, coming home to an empty house and trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy while knowing my daughter was somewhere out there, running from the law. The silence was almost worse than the confrontation had been. Marcus stopped by on a Thursday evening, looking thinner than I remembered and carrying a manila envelope under his arm. "Mr. Holt," he said when I opened the door. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "Never a bother, son. Come in." We sat in the living room, and I could see the weight of everything pressing down on his shoulders. His marriage was over, his trust had been shattered, and he was living with his father while trying to figure out what came next. "I wanted to give you these," he said, handing me the envelope. "Divorce papers. I filed yesterday. Marcus, I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right to press charges. Dad was right to insist on it. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, you know? All the times her stories didn't quite add up, all the excuses for why she couldn't work, all the expensive things that just appeared without explanation. Love makes us blind sometimes, does it? Or do we choose to be blind because the truth is too scary to face?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "I found something else, Mr. Holt, something I think you should know about." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of a credit card statement. "This is from a card I didn't know existed. A card in my name, with my social security number, but I never applied for it." I studied the screen. The charges were staggering. Expensive restaurants, luxury shopping, spa treatments, a weekend trip to Chicago that Marcus had never taken. $43,000 in charges over the past 18 months, Marcus said. "All forged in my name. She's been committing identity theft, too." The hits just kept coming. Every time I thought I understood the full scope of Sarah's betrayal, another layer revealed itself. "Have you told Detective Santos?" "I called her this morning. She said it fits the pattern, and it'll be added to the charges whenever they find Sarah." Marcus looked at me with hollow eyes. "Mr. Holt, how did we not see this? How did we live with someone for years and not know who she really was?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. "Unknown number. Answer it," Marcus said. "Put it on speaker." "Hello, Dad?" Sarah's voice was different, smaller, more frightened than I'd ever heard it. "Dad, please don't hang up." I looked at Marcus, who nodded grimly. "Where are you, Sarah?" "I can't tell you that." "But, Dad, I need help. I'm scared." "You should be scared. Do you know that the FBI is involved now? That you're wanted in multiple states?" "The FBI?" Her voice cracked. "Dad, I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? How much more were you planning to steal?" I didn't think of it as stealing. I thought of it as borrowing from family." Marcus leaned toward the phone. "What about the credit card, Sarah?" "The one you opened in my name. Was that borrowing from family, too?" Silence, then. Marcus, you're there?" "I'm here." $43,000, Sarah. $43,000 in charges I never made, on a card I never applied for. Identity theft, on top of everything else. "Marcus, I can explain." "No," Marcus said, his voice steady and cold. "You can't. There's no explanation that makes any of this okay. There's no excuse that justifies what you've done. Please, both of you, just listen. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes." I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. "Sarah, mistakes are forgetting to pay a bill or breaking a dish. What you did was deliberate, systematic fraud. You planned this. You executed it for years. You created false documents and fake businesses. These weren't mistakes. They were crimes. I know, but I was desperate. You don't understand the pressure I was under." "What pressure?" Marcus demanded. "We had everything we needed. We had a roof over our heads, food on the table, cars to drive." "What pressure, Sarah?" "The pressure to keep up, to look like we belonged. Do you know what it's like to be around your friends, Marcus? Your colleagues? They all have money, real money. They vacation in Europe and drive luxury cars and wear clothes that cost more than most people make in a month. I was tired of being the poor one in the group. So you decided to steal your way into a better social class. I decided to give us the life we deserved. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. The life we deserved? Sarah, I was happy with our life. I was happy with you. I thought we were building something together, something real, but it was all fake, wasn't it? Our whole marriage was built on stolen money. That's not true. It is true. The house, the car, the vacations, the expensive dinners, all of it paid for with money you stole from your father and credit you stole from me. Our entire relationship has been a fraud from day one. I could hear Sarah crying now, but the tears that once would have melted my resolve just sounded manipulative. "Dad," she whispered, "I need money. I need help. Help with what? I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The kind of people I've had to associate with to stay hidden. They're not good people, Dad. I owe them money and they're getting impatient. Ice formed in my stomach." "What kind of people, Sarah?" "I can't explain over the phone. But, Dad, if I don't pay them back, they're going to hurt me. I need $20,000. Marcus and I stared at each other. She was asking for money to pay off criminals while she was on the run from the law for stealing money. "Sarah," I said carefully, "you need to turn yourself in. Call Detective Santos, arrange a surrender, get a lawyer." "I can't go to prison, Dad." "You don't understand what happens to people like me in prison. People like you? Middle-class white women who don't belong there? Dad, please, I just need enough money to disappear. To start over somewhere else. I promise you'll never hear from me again." "Start over?" Marcus's voice rose. "Sarah, you're a fugitive. You can't just start over. There are warrants out for your arrest in 3 states. I can if I get far enough away. If I change my name, change my appearance. I've been researching it, and it's possible. She'd been researching how to become a permanent fugitive. My daughter, who I'd raised to believe in honesty and accountability, was planning to spend the rest of her life running from the consequences of her actions. "Sarah," I said, "I'm not giving you money to help you evade law enforcement, even if my life depends on it. Especially then. You got yourself into this situation by making bad choices. I'm not going to enable more bad choices." "Fine," she said, and I could hear the familiar anger creeping back. "Fine, but when something happens to me, when these people do what they've promised to do, remember that you could have prevented it." "Sarah, no, Dad, you've made your choice. You chose the law over your daughter. You chose revenge over family. So whatever happens next is on you." The line went dead. Marcus and I sat in silence for several minutes. "She's trying to manipulate you again," he said finally. "I know. The dangerous people, the threats to her safety. It's probably all lies designed to make you feel guilty enough to send money. Probably. But you're not sure." I wasn't sure. And that uncertainty was eating me alive. "Mr. Holt," Marcus said gently, "if Sarah really is in danger, it's because she put herself there. She chose to run instead of facing the consequences of her actions. She chose to associate with criminals instead of calling a lawyer. Every step of this path has been her choice. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But she's still my daughter, I understand. But, Mr. Holt, if you give her money now, you become an accessory to her crimes. You become someone who's helping a fugitive evade justice. Is that who you want to be?" He was right, and I knew it. But knowing it didn't make it easier. That night, I called Detective Santos and reported the conversation. She listened without comment, then sighed. "Mr. Holt, I need to warn you. We've had reports of Sarah in 3 different cities over the past 2 weeks. Las Vegas, Phoenix, and most recently Denver. She's moving fast and staying ahead of local law enforcement. What does that mean?" "It means she's getting help from someone. You don't stay ahead of a multi-state manhunt without resources and connections. Someone is funding her run, and someone is providing her with information about law enforcement activities. You think she really is involved with criminals? I think your daughter has demonstrated a remarkable ability to manipulate people into giving her what she needs. Whether those people are dangerous criminals or just sympathetic strangers, I can't say. But either way, she's in deep trouble. And if I had given her the money, you would have become part of the problem instead of part of the solution. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the little girl who used to help me make pancakes on Sunday mornings. The teenager who cried when she got her first B on a report card because she wanted to make me proud. The young woman who walked down the aisle on my arm, radiant with hope and love. Where had that person gone? When had she been replaced by this stranger who saw family as a resource to exploit and love as a weakness to manipulate? Maybe she'd never existed at all. Maybe I'd just been seeing what I wanted to see, ignoring the signs that Sarah was becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. Or maybe people really could change that completely, and the daughter I'd raised was truly gone, replaced by someone capable of destroying everyone who cared about her. Either way, the Sarah I loved was lost to me. What remained was just a stranger wearing her face, using her voice to tell lies and make threats and break hearts. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out how to live with that. 2 months after Sarah's desperate phone call, I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. It started with a knock on my door at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I opened it to find Detective Santos and a man I didn't recognize. Tall, serious, wearing a suit that screamed federal agent. "Mr. Holt," Detective Santos said. "This is Special Agent Robert Chen with the FBI. We need to talk." My heart sank. "Did you find her?" "In a manner of speaking," Agent Chen said. "May we come in?" We sat in my living room, and I could tell from their expressions that whatever they had to tell me wasn't good news. "Mr. Holt," Agent Chen began, "your daughter has been arrested." Relief flooded through me. Thank God. Where? Miami. But Mr. Holt, the circumstances of her arrest are complicated. Detective Santos leaned forward. Sarah wasn't just running from fraud charges when we found her. She was running a new scam. The relief evaporated. "What kind of scam?" Agent Chen pulled out a tablet and showed me a website. "Have you ever heard of something called a romance scam?" I studied the screen. It was a dating profile for someone named Emma Sinclair, a beautiful blonde woman with Sarah's eyes, but everything else changed. Different hair, different makeup, different clothes, but unmistakably my daughter. She's been operating on multiple dating websites, Agent Chen continued, targeting wealthy older men. Divorced executives, retired professionals, widowers with substantial assets. She tells them she's a struggling single mother who needs help with medical bills, car repairs, emergency expenses. "How much?" I asked, dreading the answer. In 2 months, she managed to steal approximately $340,000 from 17 different men across 6 states. The room spun. $340,000. In 2 months, some of these men mortgaged their homes to send her money, Detective Santos added. One man, a 72-year-old widower in Florida, emptied his retirement account. He thought he was helping the woman he loved pay for her daughter's cancer treatment. I felt sick. Her daughter's cancer treatment. She told him she had a 5-year-old daughter with leukemia, sent him fake medical bills, phony doctor's reports, even staged photos of herself in what looked like a hospital room. This man liquidated everything he had to help a child who doesn't exist. "Mr. Holt," Agent Chen said gently, "I've been working financial crimes for 12 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. The level of sophistication, the psychological manipulation, the complete lack of conscience. Your daughter isn't just a thief. She's a predator. I thought about the phone call 2 months ago, Sarah's tears, her claims about dangerous people threatening her. Had any of it been real, or had she already been planning her next set of victims? There's more, Detective Santos said. The reason she got caught was because one of her victims, a retired teacher named Harold Morrison, became suspicious when she asked for money to pay for her daughter's funeral. Expenses. Funeral expenses. She told him the child had died. Asked for $15,000 to cover burial costs. But Harold had been corresponding with 2 other men online, and they started comparing notes. They realized they were all sending money to the same woman, all for different tragic stories. Agent Chen swiped to another screen. Harold Morrison lost $37,000 to your daughter. Money he'd been saving to visit his grandchildren in Oregon. He won't be able to make that trip now. Where is she now? Dade County Jail in Miami. She's being held without bond pending extradition back to Ohio. But Mr. Holt, the charges she's facing now, this isn't just state-level fraud anymore. This is federal. Wire fraud across state lines, money laundering, identity theft, elder abuse. We're looking at 25 to life. 25 to life. Sarah could spend the rest of her existence in prison. Has she asked for a lawyer? She has. But here's the thing. She's also been asking to speak with you repeatedly. She claims she has information that could help with the investigation. What kind of information? She won't say. She'll only talk to you. I stared out the window at the street where Sarah used to ride her bike, where she'd sold lemonade from a card table when she was 7 years old. That little girl seemed like a character from a book now, a story I'd told myself about a daughter who had never really existed. Do you want me to speak with her? Agent Chen and Detective Santos exchanged glances. That's up to you, Agent Chen said. But I need to warn you, everything will be recorded. And if she tries to manipulate you into doing something illegal, you could be charged as an accessory. What could she possibly want from me now? Money for a better lawyer, probably. Or maybe she wants you to lie for her, give her an alibi, testify that she was mentally incompetent when she committed these crimes. People facing life sentences get desperate. That afternoon, I found myself in the Toledo Police Department, sitting across from a computer screen connected to the Dade County Jail. When Sarah's face appeared on the monitor, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, a lot of weight. Her hair was stringy and unwashed, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on her diminished frame. Dad. Her voice was small, broken. Dad, thank you for talking to me. What do you want, Sarah? I want to come home. You don't have a home anymore. You burned that bridge when you chose to become a career criminal. She started crying, and despite everything, part of me still wanted to comfort her. The parental instinct runs deep, even when your child has become someone you don't recognize. Dad, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you and Marcus and all those people. But I can make it right. How? I kept records of everything. Every transaction, every conversation, every detail of every scam I ran. The FBI wants the information because it'll help them prosecute the people who were helping me. What people? There's a whole network, Dad. People who teach you how to run romance scams, who provide fake identities, who help you move money without getting caught. I can give them names, bank accounts, everything. In exchange for what? A reduced sentence. Maybe 5 years instead of life. Maybe a minimum security prison instead of maximum. Maybe a chance to rebuild my life when I get out. I studied her face through the pixelated video connection. Even now, even facing life in prison, she was trying to work an angle, trying to find a way to minimize the consequences of her actions. What do you need from me? I asked. I need character witnesses. People who can testify that I wasn't always like this, that I was a good person who just made bad choices. I need you to tell them about how I used to be before everything went wrong. Before what went wrong, Sarah? What exactly do you think changed you into someone who could steal from a man grieving his dead wife? What turned you into someone who could fake a child's cancer to manipulate an old man into giving you his life savings? I don't know, she sobbed. I don't know what happened to me. I started with just that one transfer from your account, and then it got easier and easier, and before I knew it, I couldn't stop. It was like an addiction. So you're saying you're sick? That this is a medical condition? Maybe, I don't know. All I know is that I need help, not life in prison. Agent Chen's voice came through the speakers in the room. Mr. Holt, we need to wrap this up. Dad, Sarah said urgently, will you help me? Will you testify about who I used to be? I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing my daughter's face, and realized I had a choice to make. I could try to save her from the consequences of her actions one more time, or I could finally let justice take its course. Sarah, I said, I don't know who you used to be anymore. I thought I did, but after everything that's come out, I'm starting to think the person I raised was just an act. A long con that started when you were young and just got more sophisticated over time. That's not true, isn't it? How do I know anything about you was real? How do I know you ever loved me or Marcus or anyone? How do I know you weren't just practicing your manipulation skills on us for years before you moved on to bigger targets? The question hung in the air between us. Of course I loved you, she whispered. People who love their fathers don't steal their retirement funds. People who love their husbands don't commit identity theft against them. People who love anyone don't fake child cancer scams against grieving widowers. Dad, please. No, Sarah, I'm done. I'm done enabling you. I'm done making excuses for you. And I'm done pretending that you're still the person I raised. That person is gone. Maybe she never existed at all. I stood up to leave. Dad, wait. If you don't help me, I'll die in prison. Is that what you want? I turned back to look at her one last time. What I want is for Harold Morrison to get his money back. What I want is for that widower in Florida to be able to visit his grandchildren. What I want is for all the people you've hurt to find some peace. What happens to you is a consequence of the choices you made. So that's it? You're abandoning your daughter? No, Sarah. You abandoned your daughter years ago when you decided to become someone else. Someone I don't know and don't want to know. I walked out of the police station and into the parking lot, where Agent Chen was waiting for me. That couldn't have been easy, he said. It was the easiest thing I've done in months, I replied. And I meant it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. Free from guilt, free from obligation, free from the weight of trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. My daughter was gone. She'd been gone for years, probably. What remained was just a criminal who happened to share my DNA, and I was finally okay with that. 6 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse in Miami, watching my daughter receive her sentence. The judge, an elderly woman with kind but stern eyes, looked down at Sarah from the bench. Miss Patterson, she began, in my 32 years on this bench, I've rarely encountered a case that demonstrates such callous disregard for human suffering. Your victims weren't wealthy corporations or faceless institutions. They were elderly individuals who trusted you with their hearts and their life savings. Sarah stood between her court-appointed attorneys, wearing an ill-fitting grey suit. She'd gained back some of the weight she'd lost in jail, but she still looked like a shadow of the confident woman who used to manipulate everyone around her. The court has reviewed your cooperation with federal investigators, the judge continued. Your information has led to the arrest of 12 individuals involved in romance scam operations across the country. This cooperation has been noted and will be considered in sentencing. I sat in the back of the courtroom with Marcus and Richard Patterson. We'd flown down together for the hearing, united by our shared experience as Sarah's victims. However, the judge said, cooperation cannot erase the magnitude of harm you've caused. 17 victims, totaling over $300,000 in losses. Fake medical emergencies, non-existent children, elaborate lies designed to exploit the loneliness and compassion of vulnerable individuals. One of Sarah's victims, Harold Morrison, had flown in from Oregon to give a victim impact statement. His words still echoed in my mind. I trusted her because she reminded me of my own daughter. She used my love for my family against me. At 74 years old, I had to go back to work because I have no savings left. I may never see my grandchildren again because I can't afford the trip. Sarah Patterson, the judge said, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $347,000 to your victims. 15 years. Sarah would be 43 when she got out. Assuming she served her full sentence, I felt nothing, no sadness, no relief, just a hollow acknowledgement that justice had been served. Sarah's shoulders shook as the bailiff approached to escort her away. For a moment she turned and looked back at the courtroom. Her eyes found mine across the crowded room. She mouthed the word Dad, and I could see her lips forming the words, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I just watched as she was led away in shackles, disappearing through a door that would separate us for the next decade and a half. After the hearing, the three of us sat in a small cafe near the courthouse. How do you feel? Marcus asked me. Empty, I said honestly. I thought I'd feel vindicated or satisfied, but I just feel empty. That's normal, Richard said. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, even when it's grief for someone who's still alive. He was right. I was grieving for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship I thought we shared, for the future I thought we were building together. The restitution money, Marcus said. They'll never be able to collect most of it. No, I agreed. But at least she can't hurt anyone else for the next 15 years. We flew back to Toledo that evening. Richard had offered to drive me to the airport, but I'd insisted on taking my own truck. I needed the time alone to process everything that had happened. Over the following weeks, life slowly began to return to something resembling normal. I went back to work full-time, finished a bathroom renovation I'd been putting off, and started sleeping through the night again. Marcus filed his divorce papers. It would be final in 6 months, the lawyer said. He'd already moved out of Richard's house and into a small apartment downtown. We had dinner together once a week, an unlikely friendship born from shared trauma. I've been thinking about dating again, he told me one Thursday evening over burgers at a local diner. That's good, I said. You deserve to be happy. I'm scared, though. How do you trust someone after something like this? How do you know they're telling you the truth? I thought about it. I guess you don't know. Not completely. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life alone, and that's not really living. Wise words from a man who hasn't dated in 20 years, Marcus said with a smile. He was right. I hadn't been on a date since Sarah's mother left. I'd been too busy working, too focused on raising my daughter, too afraid of bringing someone into our lives who might hurt Sarah. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from Sarah. The return address was FCI Coleman, a federal women's prison in Florida. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've been in counseling here, and my therapist says I need to make amends to the people I hurt. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because it's part of taking responsibility for what I did. I want you to know that I understand now what I put you through. I understand that I betrayed your trust, stole your future, and destroyed our relationship. I understand that I hurt Marcus and Richard and all those people I scammed in Florida. The counselor helped me see that I've been lying to myself for years. I told myself I was borrowing money, that I was just trying to keep up, that I deserved a better life. But the truth is, I became addicted to the feeling of power I got from manipulating people. I became addicted to the rush of getting away with things. I was never the daughter you thought you raised. I was pretending to be that person while planning how to take advantage of you. I know that now, and I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to write back or visit or send money. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did, and I'm sorry. I love you, even though I know I don't deserve your love anymore. Sarah, I read the letter 3 times, then put it in my kitchen drawer with the other papers I didn't know what to do with. A week later, I found myself at the Riverside Community Center, which offered support groups for families of criminals. I'd seen the flyer on a bulletin board at the grocery store and decided to check it out. The group consisted of 8 people, sitting in a circle in a small room that smelled like coffee and industrial carpet. There was Janet, whose son was serving time for armed robbery. Robert, whose daughter had been convicted of embezzling from her employer. Patricia, whose grandson was in juvenile detention for drug dealing. When it was my turn to speak, I told them about Sarah, about the theft, the fraud, the years of lies, about pressing charges against my own daughter and watching her get sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. "Do you regret it?" asked Janet. "Turning her in?" I thought about it. No, I regret that it was necessary. I regret that she became someone who required turning in. But I don't regret doing what was right. "Do you think you'll ever have a relationship with her again?" asked Robert. "I don't know. Maybe someday, but it would have to be with the person she actually is, not the person I wanted her to be. And I'm not sure that person is someone I'd want in my life." After the meeting, I drove home through the quiet streets of Toledo. It was late October, and the leaves were turning colors, carpeting the sidewalks with gold and red. The same sidewalks where Sarah had learned to ride a bike, where she'd walked to school, where she'd grown up into someone I never saw coming. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my brother Mike in Denver and asked if his offer to visit for Thanksgiving was still open. "Of course," he said. "But I thought you always spent holidays with Sarah." "Not anymore," I said. "It's time to start new traditions." For the first time in months, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt possibility. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could build a life that wasn't defined by what my daughter had done to me. I was 59 years old. I had good friends, honest work, and a future that belonged to me. I had learned to set boundaries, to choose justice over enabling, to protect myself from people who would hurt me, even when those people shared my DNA. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Even when that someone is your own child. Sarah would serve her 15 years. She would get out eventually, hopefully as a different person than the one who went in. But that would be her journey, not mine. My journey was just beginning. 2 years have passed since that November day when Sarah said those words that changed everything. Everything he has will be mine someday anyway. As I write this, I'm sitting in my brother Mike's backyard in Denver, watching my nephews play soccer while their mother prepares Thanksgiving dinner. It's my second year spending the holidays here, and it feels more like home than my own house sometimes. The house in Toledo is different now. I sold Sarah's childhood bedroom furniture and converted the room into a home office. I replaced the kitchen table, where we had our last conversation, with a smaller one that fits just me. I kept the grandfather clock. It still marks time the same way it always has, but now each tick sounds like progress instead of waiting. Marcus remarried last spring. Her name is Jennifer, and she's a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that fills up rooms. They had a small ceremony in Richard's backyard, and I was honored to attend. Marcus asked me to give a toast, and I told the guests that watching him rebuild his life had taught me that it's never too late to start over. Richard and I have become close friends. We meet for coffee every few weeks, and sometimes he calls just to check in. Last month, he helped me set up a small scholarship fund at the local community college for adult students pursuing trades. We named it the Second Chances Scholarship. The irony isn't lost on either of us. I still get letters from Sarah, about one every 3 months. I read them all, but I don't respond. Her counselor was right. She needed to write them for her own healing. But I don't need to engage with them for mine. The last letter mentioned that she's gotten her GED and is working toward a bachelor's degree in social work. She wants to help people when she gets out. I hope that's true. I hope she's genuinely changing. But I also know that hope doesn't obligate me to anything. The support group at the community center became a lifeline I didn't know I needed. Hearing other people's stories helped me understand that family trauma doesn't discriminate. Janet's son completed his sentence and is now working at an auto repair shop, trying to rebuild his relationship with his mother, one supervised visit at a time. Robert's daughter paid full restitution to her former employer and started her own small business. Not every story has a happy ending, but some do. Last month I did something that surprised even me. I went on a date. Her name is Carol, and I met her at the hardware store where she was trying to figure out how to fix a leaky faucet. I offered to help, and we ended up talking for 2 hours in the plumbing aisle. She's a retired nurse, a widow of 3 years, with 2 grown sons who live in California. She has laugh lines around her eyes and calloused hands from gardening. We've had dinner 3 times, and she knows about Sarah. I told her everything on our second date because I decided I was done with secrets and half-truths. She listened without judgment and said, "That must have been the hardest thing you've ever done." It was. But it was also the most important thing I've ever done. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I'm more careful about trust, but I'm not cynical. I'm more protective of my boundaries, but I'm not isolated. I've learned that love without accountability isn't love at all. It's enabling. And I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. The retirement money that Richard gave me is safely invested now, growing again toward the future I almost lost. I've added to it every month, building something that belongs to me and no one else. I'm planning to retire at 65, maybe travel a little, maybe spend more time with Mike's family, maybe build something new with Carol. If we both decide that's what we want. People sometimes ask me if I miss Sarah, and the answer is complicated. I miss the daughter I thought I had. I grieve for the relationship I thought we shared. But I don't miss the stress, the lies, the constant feeling that something was wrong. I don't miss being someone's victim. The daughter I raised was a fiction. The woman in federal prison is a stranger. But the father I became through this experience, the man who learned to choose justice over comfort, truth over peace, self-respect over family obligation, that person is real. That person is someone I'm proud to be. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, respect, honesty, and mutual support. By that definition, Marcus and Richard Patterson are more family to me than Sarah ever was. The people in my support group are family. Mike and his wife and children are family. Carol might become family, if we're both brave enough to try. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given Sarah the money that first time she asked for help with a down payment. If I'd been more generous, more trusting, more willing to enable her dreams. Would she have stopped there? Would she have been satisfied with just that one transgression? I don't think so. I think Sarah was always going to become who she became. The only question was how much damage she'd do along the way, and who would be strong enough to stop her. I'm glad it was me. I'm glad I found the courage to choose what was right over what was easy. I'm glad I learned the difference between love and enabling before it was too late. My name is Evander Holt. I'm 61 years old, and I'm building a life based on honesty, dignity, and hope. It's a good life. A life I'm proud of, a life that belongs entirely to me, and that's worth more than all the stolen money in the world. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it moved you, challenged you, or made you think about your own relationships differently, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything and helps me continue sharing stories that matter. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? I read every comment and appreciate you being part of this community. Until next time, remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most meaningful changes.